Fact number 4. The apostles preached that Jesus rose physically from the dead.
As far as we know from Paul believed that Jesus did have a flesh and blood body, but this was still a very spiritual and celestial body, even though it was corporeal. At this particular point in time, as far as like spirits and ghosts and everything like that, they didn't consider them to be non-corporeal. Right? It's not like ghosties running around Judea. Like the celestial beings of the Bible are very much corporeal beings. They're just like magical beings. Even if you look all throughout the Old Testament, you don't like, you've got the Holy Spirit that does things. But whenever you hear about angels or other celestial beings and even God, you have very corporeal things that are walking around the area at the time. It's not really all that out there for them to consider Jesus to have a corporeal resurrection, but when they say physical resurrection, they mean like Jesus wasn't magically resurrected, that he somehow just physically came back from the dead or something like that, that he was very real and historically here on earth after his death. And we just don't have any evidence of that. We have evidence of a corporeal celestial being believed to be here, but we don't have any evidence of a real historical person. Now, as far as them thinking that it's somehow not a celestial figure of Jesus pops into existence and pops out of existence in multiple instances in the Gospels. You can't sit there and tell me that he physically resurrected and became just like any other human again, but then he fucking disappears like goddamn Batman, okay? It just doesn't happen.
Now, on the day of Pentecost, when Peter was preaching that first recorded gospel sermon in about AD 33, he insisted to that multitude of Jews that God had raised Jesus up from the grave.
Yeah, that's what he believed, but that doesn't mean that it's true. And also, we only have evidence of that from, I believe it's Acts is where that comes from. And Acts is historical fiction. Like there's literally no way to tell if Acts records anything that's really historical as far as like the main events go. I'm gonna have to press X for doubt on this one.
And God had loosed him from the pangs of death. He went so far as to quote an Old Testament psalm that talked about how God would not allow his Holy One to see corruption.
This just solidifies my point in that everything that we know about Jesus, about his passion, about his resurrection and everything like that, it all stems from the Old Testament. That is the purpose of the New Testament, at least the Gospels, is to connect Jesus to the Old Testament. That's the entire point of those things.
Peter stated that Jesus Christ rose. And not only that Jesus Christ rose, but that it was a physical resurrection.
I mean, plenty of people have fever dreams now where they imagine, like, I don't know, fucking Elvis coming back to life and, you know, shaking their hand. That doesn't mean that Elvis actually came back to life there, cow butt.
He stated specifically that his flesh would not see corruption. Some people have said, well, the apostles didn't believe in a physical resurrection. They might have thought they had seen Jesus' ghost or his spirit or something along those lines, but they didn't really teach that it was physical.
So I wouldn't suggest going down this route if you're countering, you know, this particular apologetic of saying that, oh, he was a ghosty, because that's kind of being a little anachronistic, because you're importing your understanding of what a spirit or a ghost is into a time in which they viewed spirits and celestial beings in completely different ways. They understood celestial beings like angels, deities, and others, divine beings, as being very real, like existing in a very real place in the universe. And that place is in the heavens, which was a very physical place. It's the entire reason why they built the Tower of Babel, They were trying to get up to the heavens, right? They were trying to get to the firmament. So they believed that it was a very real place. They believed that the celestial beings that inhabited those particular levels of heaven were very physical and real, just like they considered hell to be a very real place. They referred to it as Sheol, and it was a very real place that you could go to if you wanted to, but nobody wanted to fucking go there. They wanted to go to the heavens. But in Jewish theology, the heavens were all inhabited by celestial beings and not inhabited by like humans that were on earth. That's why humans in the Jewish theology all just go to Sheol, and they don't go to heaven. They don't go to the multiple levels of heaven. They go to Sheol.
Oh, on the contrary, they certainly did teach that it was physical. In fact, that was the cornerstone of the preaching and teaching of the apostles. It was the singular criterion that was used to add a new apostle, that person had to have been with the other apostles and witnessed the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. That was the primary criterion to become an apostle of the one that took Judas's place. So yes, the apostles preached that Jesus physically rose from the grave.
So yes, he goes out on a limb here, and he makes a claim that's actually not found in evidence. Specifically, that claim is that in order to be an apostle, you had to be there when Jesus resurrected. Now, in case you guys don't remember, when Jesus resurrected or was found to be resurrected, the only people that were actually around were the women that found the tomb. So if he wants to go this particular definition, then it's only the women that were ever apostles. And that just doesn't make sense because Paul was an apostle. In fact, Paul tells us exactly what it takes to be an apostle. And what it takes to be an apostle is to have a hallucinatory vision of Jesus. And that's it. It's not that he had to be there with all the other apostles to witness the resurrection of Jesus. That doesn't even make sense for Paul. Tell me this there, ass. Why is it that Paul witnessed the resurrection? He was there for Jesus resurrecting, and that's what made him an apostle later. But then after witnessing the resurrection, he went around persecuting the Christians. And it wasn't until he had his vision on the Damascus Road that he turned to Christ and started being an apostle. He wasn't convinced by the initial resurrection. He had to be convinced by a further hallucination. None of this makes sense whatsoever as far as the context of Paul being an apostle goes. So he's just inconsistent completely with all of his ideas in this.